My sister-in-law held a family vote. Should she be banned from family events? They all raised their hands. My son cried, "Mom, why are they doing this?" I smiled through tears. I didn't fight back. But the next week, they received a letter from a law firm. Inside was something that shut them up immediately. They all raised their hands, one after another. My sister-in-law, Betrayal, stood there like a judge, smiling, as if this was just a fun little game. She asked the question like it was casual. Should Alira be uninvited from family events? Hands went up. My mother-in-law, my father-in-law, cousins, spouses, every hand except one, Grandpa Joe's. I sat there frozen. My son, Luca, clinging to me. He looked around, confused. His little voice broke the silence. "Mom, why are they doing this?" I didn't answer. I just smiled through the sting in my eyes, stood up, and said thank you for the meal. We walked out with our dignity. I didn't fight back, but the next week, they each received a letter from a law firm. Inside was something that shut them up completely. Sundays used to mean something different. Before my husband, Micah, died, they were full of laughter and noise. Kids running barefoot through the yard, the smell of garlic bread in the oven, Grandpa Joe playing old country music on his portable speaker, while Betrayal tried to make him turn it down. After Micah's accident, Sundays became the loudest silence I'd ever known. At first, everyone was kind. Dinners were brought to my doorstep. Betrayal came over with store-bought casseroles and hugs that smelled like her favorite lavender perfume. My in-laws, Carol and Robert, insisted I stay close to family. But as the months passed, the sympathy faded. The texts got shorter, phone calls stopped, invitations disappeared. I'd never argued with anyone. I never demanded anything. I didn't cause scenes. I simply stopped being useful. And that's when I realized, I had been accepted not as family, but as Micah's wife. Without him, I was just a reminder of what they lost, or maybe what they didn't want to face. But Luca, he never stopped asking. He was only 7 when his dad died, and now at 10, he still carried Micah's smile, his dimples, and the same quiet way of observing people. "Mom," he asked once, "why doesn't Grandma ever call us anymore?" I told him maybe they were just busy. Maybe they didn't know how to talk about Daddy. He nodded, but I could see the sadness settle into his little chest. He missed them in a way I couldn't fix. And for him, I decided to try again. So when Betrayal messaged me out of the blue one Thursday, "Family dinner Sunday, would be nice to see you and Luca," I froze. I reread the text 5 times. It felt like bait, but Luca's face lit up when I told him, and that's all it took. We arrived 10 minutes early. Their house was pristine, not a toy out of place, like a magazine spread. Betrayal met us at the door, all smiles and hugs. "You look great," she said, brushing her cheek against mine. She smelled like lavender and control. Luca ran inside to play. I followed slower, taking it all in. Carol barely looked at me when I walked into the kitchen. She was slicing lemons for her iced tea, pretending she hadn't just paused a conversation the second I walked in. Robert gave me a nod from his seat in the den, eyes already back on the football game. No one said they were glad to see us. I offered to help with dinner prep, was handed the salad bowl, and then quickly left out of the kitchen talk. Betrayal and Carol kept laughing at things I wasn't included in. I smiled anyway. I had gotten good at that over the years, smiling in places I didn't belong. When dinner was served, I noticed Luca was already at the kids' table. Betrayal served him first, then the others. When it was my turn, I had to reach around the dishes to get a plate. Small things, but they added up. Conversation buzzed around me. Work promotions, school updates, vacation plans. Not once did anyone ask how Luca was doing, or me. It was as if we were guests at a party we hadn't been officially invited to. The only warm moment came from Grandpa Joe. He moved slowly now using a cane, but his presence was as steady as ever. He sat down beside me and passed the bread. "I'm glad you came," he said quietly. "Luca needs to know he still belongs, and you do too, even if they don't know it yet." I swallowed the lump in my throat. He always had a way of saying exactly what I needed to hear, just when I needed to hear it. I looked over at Luca. He was laughing with his cousin Levi, his plate piled with food, eyes full of hope. He didn't see what I saw. He didn't feel the way the air shifted when I walked into a room. He was still a child, believing the best in people, and I didn't want to take that from him. So I smiled. I stayed quiet. And I convinced myself I could get through just one dinner. But what happened next would tear through that silence and expose everything I had tried so hard to ignore. It happened after dessert. We were still at the long dining table, plates scattered with crumbs, glasses half full. The kids had run off to the basement, and for a moment, I thought maybe I'd made it. Maybe I had survived the evening. That's when Betrayal stood up. She tapped her glass with a spoon. Everyone turned to her, as if on cue. I thought she was going to make an announcement, maybe share some family news. I sat up straighter, forcing a smile. Then she said it. I think we need to talk about the tension in this family. She said it like she was doing everyone a favor. A performative sigh, a glance at her husband for support. She looked around the table with rehearsed concern. I know I'm not the only one who's felt it, this sense of awkwardness, and I think we need to be honest about where it's coming from. I didn't understand what she meant. At first, no one looked at me, but I felt it anyway. My chest tightened. I'm not trying to stir drama, she continued, but I think it's fair to say that things haven't felt the same since Alara rejoined us. That was the first time she said my name, like I was the elephant in the room, like I wasn't sitting right there. I'm not saying you haven't been through a lot, she added, turning to me. We all grieved Micah. We all loved him, but we've also had to move forward. And I think some of us feel like we're constantly walking on eggshells. Some of us. I looked around. Carol wouldn't meet my eyes. Robert leaned back in his chair, arms folded. A few cousins were fidgeting, pretending to adjust silverware. Then Brielle smiled. I'll never forget that smile. So I thought we could just vote. No hard feelings. Just a show of hands. Should Alira be uninvited from future family events for the sake of peace? For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. I felt like I had left my body. Then it happened. One hand went up. Carol. Then another. Robert. Then Levi's mom. Then his dad. Even people I hadn't spoken to all night, even the ones who never seemed to care either way. Every hand raised, except for Grandpa Joe. I couldn't breathe. I felt the blood rush from my face. My ears were ringing. Then I felt a tug on my sleeve. Luca. He'd come back up from the basement, probably to ask for a second slice of cake. Instead, he'd walked into this. He looked around, confused. Then he looked at me. Mom, he said softly, why are they doing this? That broke me. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I did. I just couldn't say it in front of him. I forced a smile. My lips trembled. I reached out, took his hand, and stood up. Thank you for dinner, I said to the table. My voice was quiet but steady. We should be going. No one stopped me. Not one person said a word. As we walked out, Grandpa Joe rose from his seat and gently touched my shoulder. You don't deserve this, he whispered. I nodded once and kept walking. I held Luca's hand tightly the entire way to the car. He didn't ask anything else. He just rested his head on my arm as I buckled him in. I drove home in silence, the kind of silence that sits deep in your bones. That night, I sat in the dark for hours, listening to my son breathe as he slept beside me. I knew Brielle had orchestrated that moment. She'd planned it, rehearsed it, built it up over months, maybe longer. She didn't want me gone for peace. She wanted me erased. And this vote, it was her performance, her little show of power, and I let her have it. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I wasn't going to stay quiet forever. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. But I was done playing the part of the grieving widow who knew her place. The next move was mine. The house was quiet that night, except for the soft of the refrigerator and the rhythm of Luca's breathing beside me. He'd fallen asleep curled against my side, one hand still gripping the sleeve of my shirt like he was afraid I'd disappear. I lay there in the dark, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed everything. Brielle's voice, the raised hands, Luca's question. Why are they doing this? For years, I'd swallowed my pride for the sake of peace. I'd let them slowly push me aside, convince myself that silence was the noble thing, that being quiet was better than being the problem. But that vote wasn't just cruel. It was strategic. It was meant to humiliate me in front of everyone. It was meant to show Luca that his mother didn't belong in the family she once helped hold together and that I couldn't allow. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him. I made tea, but didn't drink it. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up a folder I hadn't touched in years, old text messages, voice memos, photos. I scrolled through conversations I'd saved out of habit, messages from Brielle that had once felt passive-aggressive, but now felt intentional. One caught my eye. You don't have to come to Luca's recital. It might be awkward for everyone. Another, Carol says it's probably better if you just drop him off at the party. It'll be easier for the other kids. I hadn't realized how long the distancing had been happening until I saw it laid out like this. Message after message, erasing me one polite suggestion at a time. I opened my notes app and started writing. I listed everything. The way they excluded me from family decisions, the whispered comments about my parenting, the vote. I remembered how Brielle used to say things like, we all feel a little uncomfortable around Alira, or you can be so sensitive. It hit me. This wasn't just personal. It was a pattern, one that could legally be challenged. By morning, I'd found a law firm online that specialized in family harassment and reputation damage. I submitted a request for a consultation. Within 24 hours, I was speaking to a woman named Danica Rhodes, a sharp, calm attorney who didn't blink twice when I told her what happened. I don't think they expect you to push back, she said. They don't, I replied. But I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for my son. Danica reviewed the messages. She listened to the audio I didn't even realize we had, recorded by Luca's smartwatch, which I'd forgotten could store voice logs. It had captured almost everything from that night. Brielle's voice proposing the vote, the awkward silence, the moment my name was said, and the exact words she used, "She's too weak to fight back anyway." Danica leaned back in her chair. "We'll draft a cease and desist letter, but we're going to attach documentation. We'll make it clear this isn't just about hurt feelings. It's about calculated harm, exclusion of a child, and emotional manipulation of a minor." I exhaled. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. We also discussed next steps, what it would look like to formally restrict access to Luca from family members who created an unsafe emotional environment. It wasn't a custody battle. It was a warning. Danica's team sent the letter 2 days later. Each family member received their own sealed copy. It wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. But it hit like a thunderclap, and suddenly all the people who had voted to push me out went completely silent. The letters were delivered on a Thursday morning, each one signed, sealed, and stamped from Rhodes and Keene Family Law, addressed individually to every adult who had raised their hand. I didn't tell anyone they were coming. I didn't post anything online or send warning texts. I went about my day as usual. Made breakfast, packed Luca's lunch, took him to school. But there was a strange calm in my chest, a quiet knowing that something irreversible had been set in motion. By noon, the calls started. First a missed call from Carol, then 2 text messages from Robert. "We need to talk. This has gone too far." I didn't reply. At 1:23 p.m., Brielle texted me. "Seriously? A lawyer? What is wrong with you?" Then 10 minutes later, "You're really going to tear this family apart over a stupid dinner?" Still, I said nothing. Because it wasn't just a dinner, and she knew it. Inside the letter, Danica's language had been clear, confident, and legally sound. It outlined a pattern of targeted exclusion, emotional manipulation, and deliberate humiliation in front of a child. It referenced specific text messages, timestamps, and direct quotes from the smartwatch recording. The moment Brielle said she's too weak to fight back was printed in bold. It also included a warning. If any further attempts were made to isolate Alira or create a hostile emotional environment for Luca, the next steps would include a formal complaint with Child Protective Services and legal motion to limit unsupervised access to him. The part that hit the hardest? The letter's closing paragraph. "This firm represents a mother who has chosen silence in the past for the sake of family harmony. That silence is no longer a gift she's willing to give." Within 24 hours, every single person who had raised their hand had gone silent. No one tried to defend the vote. No one asked if the audio was real. They all knew what they did. On Friday, I got a handwritten letter in my mailbox. No return address, just a folded card inside. It was from Carol. "I'm sorry for what happened. We didn't think you'd take it this far. Maybe we were wrong about you." I read it once and placed it in the drawer next to my wedding ring. Not long after, Grandpa Joe called. "Your lawyer gave them all heart attacks," he said, laughing softly. "Brielle's been quiet as a mouse. She deserves worse," I said. "She does," he agreed. "But I'm proud of you anyway." That weekend, Luca asked if we were going back to their house again. I looked at him, this brave, sensitive boy who had seen more cruelty in one night than most adults do in years. "No, sweetheart," I said. "Not for a while." He nodded, then smiled. "That's okay. Can we go to the beach instead?" "Yes," I said. "The beach sounds perfect." It's been 3 months since the letter went out. No one's tried to organize another vote. No one's invited us back, and no one's apologized, at least not in person. The silence hasn't just continued. It's grown louder, and yet, for the first time in years, I feel free. I don't wake up dreading texts or wondering what I did wrong. I don't mentally prepare for another cold shoulder or backhanded comment disguised as just being honest. I don't have to walk into a room and shrink anymore. Most importantly, Luca is okay. Better than okay. He doesn't ask about the cousins anymore. He stopped checking the mailbox for birthday cards that never came. We've built new traditions now. One's not based on keeping peace with people who tried to erase us, but on creating joy with those who genuinely care. Every Sunday morning, we get donuts and walk the lake trail behind our apartment. Luca brings his sketchbook. I bring coffee. We sit on the bench where Micah used to take him as a toddler, and we talk about school, cartoons, space, whatever he wants. There's no tension. No pretending. Just peace. I've also started going to therapy. That was new for me. I used to think therapy was for people who couldn't hold themselves together. Now I know it's for people who are holding themselves together, but don't want to bleed in silence. My therapist helped me name what happened that night. Not just exclusion, but emotional abuse, manipulation, and the kind of bullying adults disguise with smiles and dinner parties. She helped me understand that I wasn't crazy or overreacting, that the vote wasn't a sudden betrayal. It was the final act in a long pattern of disrespect. That clarity healed something I didn't even know was broken. And yet, I don't feel angry anymore. I don't wake up wishing I could make them feel what they made me feel. That's the part no one talks about, how healing makes revenge irrelevant. I didn't want to ruin their lives. I wanted my son to have a mother who could show him what strength really looks like. Strength isn't screaming at a table full of people who've already made up their minds. Strength is knowing you can leave the room and still command respect when the door shuts behind you. Some people might say, I overreacted, that it was just a vote. But if you've ever sat quietly in a room full of people who pretend you don't belong, you know how loud that silence can be. I didn't take legal action to be dramatic. I did it to set a boundary that words couldn't. The truth is, I gave them years of kindness, of understanding. I gave them every opportunity to treat me like a human being, like the mother of their grandson. They responded with cruelty disguised as civility. They counted on me staying silent because they mistook silence for weakness. They were wrong. I've learned something else too. Family isn't sacred just because it's family. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to mistreat you. Names and DNA don't excuse manipulation. And loyalty doesn't mean tolerating pain. Family is built, chosen, earned. Grandpa Joe still comes by every Saturday. He and Luca play chess badly and eat sugar cookies he brings from the corner bakery. He never talks about the others, and I never ask. Last week, Luca asked me, "Do you think they miss us?" I paused. "Maybe," I said. "But missing someone doesn't mean you treated them right." He nodded and went back to coloring. He's growing up with more wisdom than most adults I know. I used to think my story was about being shut out, but it's not. It's about walking away and realizing I didn't lose a family. I escaped one, and now, we're building something better. Not louder, not bigger, but kinder, safer, and completely ours. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the quiet one in the room, the one underestimated, the one who chose peace over revenge, then I hope this gave you a little strength. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's the loudest kind of power there is. If you connected with this journey, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment below. Have you ever had to walk away from a family to protect your peace? And if you want more true stories like this, stories about strength, healing, and finding your voice, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. Thank you for being here. We don't need a room full of people to belong. We just need one space where we're heard.